So we got Lil Durk, we got Lul Pab's mom, and we got YB. If you haven't hit that notification bell or that like button, make sure that you do if you enjoy the content. So basically, Lil Durk this whole time has been trying to put a bill package together and also, basically showing that his case is weak. And doing both of those is like a good strategy to basically break down the case and, have it like, this case is weak. And also, he should, be able to get out. He's not really going to be worried about anything. But she not really going for that. She says she know the case is weak, but she also think, his net worth is way more than, what he trying to give. So it's not like a middle ground or anything like that. And she feel like, he'll just, be tempted to flee, given that it's so small to, what he actually have. And she also, like I said the case is weak, and I guess it's because, one of the biggest things that the feds is using was the audio of, the song that ended up happening, basically showing that Lil Durk was speaking on Quando Rondo when he added the clip, saying no. But it was really like, somebody else doing that. That wasn't an actual song. They already proved that the song was made way before that whole situation. And even though she did say no to the bill, I feel like, he's still in a good position because that's the only thing that she's worried about. She's not worried about, really the case like that. She not, stuck on when he did this. She's not really sure about it. She felt like the case was weak. So I just think he should just up the price. I think if everything is over with, once he on bail, he do go to his court dates, and then they kind of figure out that he didn't have nothing to do with it. I think he get all his money back. So I think that's what he should do. He should focus on, the bail package and, trying to get out right now. But his lawyer, Drew Finley, ended up doing the interview. This is the same lawyer that everybody was talking about that YB just recently had for his case. He basically ended up, during the interview, he ended up speaking out, and he ended up talking about them, removing the death penalty completely. And then he also ended up talking about, his situation of, Lil Pab mom ended up going. A lot of people was kind of scared, like, she might, influence the jurors because of her speech and her statement. But he said, he wasn't worried about that. He said, he respected it. He said, like, out of all the cases he did, she was the most, respectful in the situation. And the biggest thing that, he got from it is that she said she don't know what's going on at all. So it's not seeming like, she accusing Lil Durk. She just don't know about the situation at all. She just, basically going to his trial to, get an understanding of the situation. And, she don't know if Lil Durk did it himself or anybody around him.
You heard the pronouncement in court today that it's not a death penalty case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about how the victim's mother's statement might impact the judge? I mean, he even acknowledged it.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I thought she actually gave a very level-headed statement. She literally said she didn't know what happened. She lost her son. I've heard those statements during the span of my career. I've tried so many homicide and murder cases, and that was probably the most mature, level-headed one I've ever heard.
So like he said, Lil Pab's mother ended up giving out a statement, basically talking about her son and everything, how, she ended up birthing him at 15 and, all this other stuff. And she also ended up, showing like a button that came from like the, service when he ended up passing away. So, she was just, really hurt about the whole situation. She don't know about, what's going on. So I guess, it could be the possibility that it is Durk. So that's why she's going to this trial to, actually show support for her son. Now moving on to YB, we seen that he got pardoned by Trump. He was already out, and it seemed like his whole situation was, pretty much over with. But I think he still had to do like, regular drug screenings and, other stuff like that. So pretty much now the whole case is, over and done with, so he don't have to do nothing like that. And I honestly think that's a bad thing because, he might feel influenced or, he might feel free where he could just, start doing drugs and stuff again. And he don't feel like, nobody looking over his back. So that might, stop that whole situation. So hopefully, he's strong on that front and he just, keep it up. But basically it's a situation where one of the Utah representatives feel like the state should go after him. So instead of like the feds, they feel like the state should go after him. But I don't think that's a possibility because the case is over with. But it's crazy that they would still think about getting YB even after the feds end up losing. So even though the feds end up losing, I don't think they would have a chance at actually getting that YB. But I think he referring to one of the dudes ended up getting online. He ended up basically getting on the news and he ended up talking about the pharmacy situation. He ended up breaking it down. He said he was one of the pharmacies that YB basically ended up targeting. So I guess somebody ended up breaking into it. They showed the video clip of somebody breaking into it. He said he had to pay for everything. So once they ended up catching YB, they heard nothing from it, and all of a sudden he had to pay for everything. YB wasn't accused of anything or nothing, and it was just the whole thing where people was breaking in, people was getting a prescription, people was using the fake names and everything, and they was saying it was all tied to YB orchestrating this whole thing.
This Utah pharmacist was not not happy to learn rapper NBA YoungBoy is now a free man. Kentrell Golden was serving a 23-month sentence for federal charges. Before that, he paid a $25,000 fine for his involvement in a prescription fraud ring. 16 pharmacies across Utah and other states were broken into.
Each one of those stores lost somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000.
This is where he gets caught in the door.
Windows I had to replace took my whole month's worth of earnings from me.
And pretty much after that, they spoke on YB, you know, being involved with the, you know, calls, the fake calls, and, you know, stuff like that. So that whole situation is crazy. You know, the other dude, you know, I feel his pain. Somebody else breaking into, you know, his stuff. I guess they allegedly found the dude, and, you know, all this stuff, sudden, you know, all his stuff get, you know, dropped by the president, and then you got to pay for everything. So that is kind of crazy. But y'all let me know in the comment section how you feel about Lil Pab's mom going to Lil Durk hearing, and how you feel about, you know, YB and the, you know, Utah representative saying that he should, you know, go after YB still, or they should. Y'all make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.